Coming up on this week's episode of the Retro Hour podcast, Mortal Kombat returns to the big screen.
GameStop are set to introduce retro gaming-only stores.
And we talk to the company still producing official Sega games and consoles in 2019.
Hello and welcome to the Retro Hour podcast, your weekly dose of retro gaming and technology news with me, Dan Wood.
Me, Ravi Abbott.
And me, Joe Fox.
And welcome to this week's show. Full crew back in the house again. Welcome back, Ravi.
Oh, it's good to be back. And you guys, you know, you've been looking after the house. You've been keeping it in order whilst I was away. And my God, what an episode last week with Plato. People have reacted so well to that, haven't they?
Yeah, me and Joe, we held the fort down. You know,
I was going to say, we came close to burning the place down, but I'm glad Ravi's pleased with the results.
The audience number's only about quartered.
Something like that.
Not too bad. But
Bring Ravi back. That's all we've had.
Yeah, we did have a bit of that on YouTube, I think.
We did, actually.
Yeah. Ravi's fanboy. That was your mum, I bet, wasn't it? Ravi? So,
Yeah.
different accounts. But, last week, I mean, because we were talking about this at the start of last week's show, that we've been lifelong video game fans, and usually this show concentrates on systems that we grew up playing and games from our childhood and all that. I mean, next week, a little tease ahead here, I'm actually going to be talking on the podcast. We're going to have on one of my childhood heroes next week.
Oh, we've been trying for years to get him as well, so this is going to be good.
Oh, I'm interested. I don't even know who this is, actually.
You're not allowed to find out, Joe. Top secret.
Oh, even though I've just been invited to come and do an episode on next Tuesday, which is probably it. But
yeah, you can't find out who it is, though.
I can't find out.
I'm not going to tell you his name till the end.
Okay, fair enough.
But, in all seriousness, occasionally it is good for us to kind of go outside of our comfort zone. And that's one of the things I love about doing this show. Because, I mean, when we do try and find guests for the podcast, I often send them out a link to our episodes page on the website where it's got all our old shows on there. And I was scrolling through the other day and I thought, God, we've covered so much on this podcast over the years. And I mean, last week, we, if you checked out last week's show, we covered a system from like the early 1960s called Plato. Now, it has been getting quite a good reaction on Twitter. I've had people who work in the video games industry get in touch and tell me that they'd never heard of this system before.
Yeah, I noticed that it's not been written about, or it's not kind of in the public sphere as much as other systems were, and as much as early stuff like IRC and stuff was
and
out there.
ARPANET and that kind of, I mean, Brian's book was really the first of its kind. But one thing I did forget to mention last week, and I promise I'll give them a shout out this week, is if you're interested in experiencing Plato for yourself, I mean, there is that Cyber One service that we talked about last week on the show, but also there's a program you can download and a service called Errata. Now, what this does is, if you've got like, an old Atari ST or an Amiga or something like that, you want to make your retro computer even more retro, there's actually little Plato terminal clients they have for pretty much any imaginable retro platform. So you can hook up your old machines to Plato.
And I guess it's got a web interface as well.
Yeah, they do offer all that kind of stuff too. But I mean, there is something really cool about, loading up your Commodore 64 and going on Plato via that. I think that's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
That is Errata Online, if you found last week's show interesting. And I'll put a link to that in this week's show notes. Now, you've come back all Sega'd up, Ravi.
Oh, yeah. So I talked to Stefano Arnaldo, and he's the actual CEO of Tectoy. And Tectoy, a unique kind of company. They kind of share a bit of like British style of history because the Master System was quite popular in England.
Yeah.
And it's the same in South America. They really tried to push the Master System there. But, oh my God, this interview is amazing. He talks about how he actually approached Sega asking about a black and white handheld console with Sonic on to kind of rival the Game Boy.
Oh, wow.
And, they've produced over 1,000 games themselves. That's absolutely crazy. They still produce consoles. They made a Mega Drive last year, and they've actually, well, it was in 2016, but they've actually beaten the sound on it. So the sound is perfect compared to other machines that we've seen. So this interview is going to be fascinating.
That sounds really fascinating. I found it really interesting in like 2007, 2008. I first heard about Tectoys, and a friend of mine told me about it, and it was like, there's a Brazilian company still making like Sega hardware and stuff. I was like, that's amazing. And then to hear actually that it's still going in 2019, and then to actually find out that Ravi's actually met the guy behind it all, and that actually he's just as passionate about it, if not more passionate about any of us, because really for him it's a real labour of love as well.
Well, the crazy thing is as well, Brazilian licensing laws are unique to anywhere. So you have to build the machine inside Brazil. It has to be manufactured. Yeah. So they had a deal where they had manufacturing plants, where they had all this expertise, and they've kind of kept going with all of that, and that even goes back to when they worked with the television industry. They have their own TV format. It's based on NTSC.
Okay.
But it's not. And it's kind of weird,
So have Tectoy been going a long time then?
Oh, a very long time,
Okay.
yeah. And this isn't their main source of income. They sell lots of other toys and stuff like that, but this is kind of her
this is like
passion
he's
project.
A big retro gamer, isn't he? He's big into it, so CEO. This is like his project.
And, I mean, you was like, a Sega fanboy. You always would love to see new Sega hardware on the shelves, wouldn't you?
Well, one of the first things we talk about is when he went to Japan to visit Nintendo and they were still making card games.
Wow,
so that's how old it is.
Wow, okay, that's crazy. So we're going to get the story of, because I mean, you don't read much about Tectoy, do you? You hear about them.
You hear about it, yeah.
Which is cool that you actually got the inside story from Stefano Arnaldo. He's the CEO of the company. Wow, okay.
Second CEO. He knew the first one and then took over.
Well, we're going to get the story of Tectoy, keep the company that are keeping, as you said in the intro, official Sega games and hardware in production in Brazil in 2019. So this is going to be really interesting. Ravi is going to be catching up with him on the show in around 15 minutes from now. And, we do this show every week and we love doing it. I mean, I did say before these amazing guests that we've had on, because what I do love when I go through the iTunes reviews, and I was looking through a few of them the other day, we get some really nice comments on there. And a few people have said the same thing. I kind of like the way people word this, that this show actually sounds like a group of mates, like you might hear in the pub, sitting around just chatting about their favourite old school games. And that's a cool thing to do.
That's a cool way to say it. It's a shame we're not mates, but...
and we haven't got beer.
And we haven't got beer. No, I lie. We're all best friends here. But no, that's quite nice. That's quite a nice description of it.
Yeah.
And I like that element as well, because then it's kind of like cements that we don't take it too seriously as well. So, but then we get these massive guests on.
Yeah, so
somehow.
we chatted up in the first half, and then, we bring you all these inside stories. But I mean, we do love doing this show, and it is, been doing this show for 3.5 years. It is humbling that, like you said, I don't know, we get these guests. The fact that they will come on the show and talk to us, and we have a privilege of coming in doing this show every week, and we love doing it. But the only way that we can do that is thanks very much to your support. Now, we do have a little supporters section on our website at theretrohour.com. And if you'd like to make a little donation into the running of the show, that lets us continue doing this. And for doing that, you will find your place in the very prestigious Retro Hour Hall of Fame. Like this week, let's give a mention to the people we love. Michael Verdi,
Stuart Brand,
Craig Crocker,
and Marcus Davies, who all made donations into the running of the show. And if you'd like to do the same, you'll find that right now. PayPal at theretrohour.com, if you'd like to do direct from your app, or at theretrohour.com is our website. And while we're mentioning people we love, let's give a big shout to this week's sponsor, and it is one of our favourite companies. Bitmap Books are back.
Oh, yes, and they are back with such a cool product. Like, I don't know if you guys have seen the visual compendiums before.
Yeah.
They're like these beautiful presented ones. Well, this is all about the Sega Master System.
Now, we're talking about Sega, obviously, with Tectoy this episode. So if you are a Sega fan, you need to check this out. Now,
And they're actually featured in the book as well.
Yeah, they are, about 3 or 4 pages.
This wasn't actually planned either,
No.
which is actually quite nice.
Shh, Joe, we plan everything meticulously. So this is the Sega Master System, a visual compendium. Now, if you haven't seen a Bitmap Books book before, these are the highest quality retro gaming books.
They are outstanding quality.
Yeah.
Just to have it on your shelf is very prestigious.
Yeah.
I'm holding it up right now. You can't see it, but I'm holding it up.
With its holographic cover.
This really is this is the perfect gift for somebody who's a retro gamer. Now, in the past, very thoughtful. I get gifts, such as the little retro consoles that you buy in Argos and stuff like that. I have a whole number of them, very, very, very thoughtful from my family and friends and stuff like that. But something like this, I would be absolutely blown away if I got something like this for Christmas. Like, it's a fantastic book. Absolutely hundreds and hundreds of just like reviews of different games and just stories as well. And like Ravi said, just, touching on like, just the history of the Master System and everything that's kind of gone on with it. If you want to know anything about any of these kind of games, because how many books have they got now, do we know?
Oh, they've released loads of books. I think this is volume 6 in the Visual Compendium series. Yeah.
And it's officially licensed by Sega as well, which is a huge kind of selling point that Sega have ticked off on this one.
Yeah, and they've got like 60,000 words in the book as well. 'Cause, Visual Compendium, they do celebrate the art style of systems when you look at these, and they present, the graphics of the games in this beautiful way in the books.
But it's also really cheap, like £30 for a book of that quality with the PDF as well. Hardback, this is.
Yeah, it's a nice hardback. And just touching on the beautiful pictures as well, the Sega Master System one actually comes with 3D glasses as well. It's just so retro, the blue and red ones.
Yeah.
And, it just pops out. It is pretty beautiful.
So if you're listening to this podcast on your phone now, or maybe, you've got us opening one of your tabs on your browser, honestly, do this right now. Open a new tab in your browser, type in bitmapbooks.co.uk. We'll wait. while you do it. And check out the book on there. Honestly, there's like some example screenshots. Sega Master System, a visual compendium. And if you go on there and check it out, you'll be really helping out this podcast as well. Give it a buy as well if you're a fan of the Sega Master System. I mean, if you're loving this week's show already, you know the stuff we're going to be talking about, I know you're going to love this book, and they're a big supporter of the podcast. So thank you, Bitmap Books, and check them out on their website at bitmapbooks.co.uk. Right then, let's get into this week's news stories. It's been a busy old week, and normally whenever we see that a new video games movie is going to be coming to the big screen, we also, for some reason, I can't imagine why, have a bit of a giggle in our voice.
Kind of roll your eyes a little bit to it.
Well, they're bringing Mortal Kombat back to the big screen.
You know what? I didn't find it that bad, actually. I found the Street Fighter ones were disappointing. I found the Mario ones, but...
You see? You say this.
Mortal Kombat, I thought it was all
quite
right.
like Mario Bros.
Yeah.
Well, the Bob Hoskins one.
I really like Mortal Kombat,
Yeah.
the 1995 version. And then I quite like Street Fighter as well. These are like some of my go-to films if I'm feeling a little bit hungover, a little bit delicate on a day off after a heavy night or
Mine's
something.
like the Princess Diaries or something.
Why doesn't that surprise me?
Miscongeniality or
Yeah.
something. But yeah, it's coming back, isn't it?
Yeah, so this is going to be, I mean, we all know that Mortal Kombat has had a big kind of resurgence as games in the
Yeah.
last couple of years. You know, the series is probably bigger than it ever has been now. So it looked like the time was right, 20 years on, to do a new Mortal Kombat movie. Now, this time, one thing I love about this is for the first time, this new movie is going to feature fatalities.
Yeah,
Oh,
they've
God.
confirmed this week it's going to be R-rated, 18 for us UK people, which is fantastic, rather than making it like a 12 or a 15. But yeah, the fatalities on the big screen.
Yeah.
So this
Like-
probably wouldn't have been able to come out.
Well, I saw
25 years
I
ago.
saw the new Mortal Kombat, and I nearly had a panic attack after it. It was so brutal. So I can't imagine what this film's going to be like. People getting cut in half and their heads flying off.
So
And it
we've
would just
got-
be mad.
Is it James Wan is directing?
He directed Saw.
He did Saw,
Yeah.
and then he did like the Conjuring films and stuff.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm not going to watch
So,
this.
and then he's the producer of all the most recent Saws and stuff. So I think he knows his
His
gonna-
gore, didn't he?
his
Yeah.
gore. Yeah, he's gonna know how to make people squirm and stuff. And then we've also got is it Joe Taslim? I think his name is how you pronounce
Yeah, I
it.
hadn't heard of him. Who's he?
So he's from one of the stars of The Raid, which
Right.
is, I'm probably going to get this completely wrong, Korean
Okay.
martial arts action film, which I've seen both of them. Really,
Okay.
really good films. I can't remember. But he's big star in that, and he's going to be playing Sub-Zero. So that's kind of everything that's confirmed so far.
So, looking at this, they're saying they're not remaking the 1995
No.
movie. This is going to be based on the new Mortal Kombat games kind of story.
No. So apparently it's going to kind of be inspired by the
Okay.
games. But reading the articles about it, as you can see, being on Mortal Kombat here, they're kind of going back. They said it's very much like the Marvel films. They've got a lot of stuff to kind of work with, and they're going to kind of come up with their own story by the sounds of things.
Right, okay.
Rather than saying this is based on this film or this game or this film or anything like that, because there's such a big universe as it is. I think they're going to take a lot of the best bits and do their own thing, which hopefully will work. I mean, I think if they just go for straight up, based on the whole Mortal Kombat, it's the 10th consecutive one and humans need to win. I think they'll be sound with that, but we'll see, I guess.
No one really watches these kind of films for the story anyway.
No,
They just want to see
exactly. People want to see
fatalities.
the fatality. Exactly.
So it's going to be out. I mean, by the looks of the date, production probably hasn't even started yet. It's not going to be out for another 2 years.
March 5th, 2021.
We'll see when they release the trailer and all the eyes are really big or messed up, and then
Yeah.
they have to change it.
Although apparently they're fixed Sonic now. I was
Okay.
reading the other day
Yeah.
that the director of the Sonic the Hedgehog movie said he thinks fans are going to be impressed at the redesign. So hopefully that'll be out any day soon.
Touch wood.
And one thing everyone's been talking about is the 50th anniversary of the moon landings.
Yeah, so the Apollo 11's been out, and I really want to watch that. It's got like loads of new footage of the moon landing, but also it's supposed to be really dramatic and have loads of new sound with it. But what amazed me about the whole Apollo stuff was how low tech it was.
Yeah.
When they landed. So someone's actually got the original Apollo navigation computer and the guidance system. It's 4 kilobytes, basically, the
Right.
whole system. And he's managed to get a Bitcoin miner working on there, which is...
Just geeks, man. Just nerds. Like-
How long will it's probably take 50 years just to
Right.
mine one.
At the rate, it would take longer than the entire lifetime of the universe to mine a single Bitcoin.
That's ridiculous. I love it, but that's ridiculous.
But
That's pretty cool.
it's just amazing, when they were looking out of the Apollo lander, they had to use a painting
Yeah.
on the glass how to land because their guidance system had messed up. I just love the whole technology, and imagine what we could do now,
Yeah, well, they're on about going back, aren't they? So
Yeah, well, there's a moon mission as well, which is the Mars mission.
Yeah. I did. I mean, we did talk about the project to restore the Apollo guidance system, didn't we? When that big series of YouTube videos came out, it's a really interesting use of it. I just have this vision of, like, a billion years in the future when the Earth's like a wasteland, and there's just this little machine there, the Apollo guidance machine, finally done that one Bitcoin, and aliens come over and they're like, what is that, bugs?
Oh, we finally got it to play Doom.
I bet they got that running already. Everything runs Doom. Now, our good friend Christian Simpson's been busy this week. Now, he, of course, does a popular YouTube channel, Perifractic's Retro Recipes. We had him on a month or two back now. And I was checking out his most recent video, and he's managed to get an Amiga 4000 that they used at Team 17 to develop the first Worms game.
Okay.
So he's done quite a bit with this.
Well, it was the FMVs, so the sections on like the PlayStation and stuff. And, I don't know if they actually had it on the Amiga version of Worms. It might have been
CD32 one did,
on the disc one, or on but the intros. Remember when he had loads of guns and the missile chased him around?
Yeah, I used to love that.
Well, Christian bought this and actually bought it with the original guy who made the cutscenes.
And the disc is in there still, the hard disk.
Yeah, so they've taken it out.
It's like going in your attic for your PS2 and you're like, oh, wow, Gran Turismo 3.
The source code.
The source code.
They managed to render it on the original Amiga.
Right.
And then he said, okay, this is Lightwave, so Lightwave's got a new version now. Can't we just render it on 1080p on a new PC?
Because Lightwave's still developed, isn't it?
So they've transferred all the files. They've redone it in 1080p, and it looks fabulous. And he's changed stuff, like there was a big error with the armpits. They could never do armpits correctly, so he's fixed all the armpits.
I never knew that was a problem in armpit rendering.
And
those pesky armpits of our Worms.
And then, of course, being Christian, he always takes it to the next level, doesn't he? So he then got a 3D printer.
Right.
Got the original Lightwave plans and started printing Worms from the original FMVs. I think that's cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that video, I've been seeing so many people loving it. It's about 45 minutes long, isn't it? It's like, cool.
It's really good.
But that makes me think, obviously these kind of 3D renderings, when you do have more powerful hardware, it kind of works. We've talked about emulators before, where you can suddenly look at these old games scaled up to like 1080p. If they're all kind of polygon based, it's just increasing the count.
It'd be funny to put them on the original game, wouldn't it? Have those like, suddenly HD cutscenes, and then it goes back to,
Yeah, that is pretty cool. So if you want to check out the video, I will put a link in our show notes at theretroad.com. Christian's channel is brilliant anyway. Should definitely be checking that out. Recently, the high streets had a bit of a tough time. Not just independent stores, but also game shops. Here in the UK, Granger Games shut down the last 12 months.
Yeah, you've only got a few independent ones, and then Game.
Yeah, and
CX,
even Game hasn't been having a good
But also
time.
places like Woolies, where you get your games, and also WH Smith are struggling at the moment. There's a lot of places where you pick them up are also.
There's not many places to go browse anymore.
Well, in America, it's actually even worse. GameStop, which is obviously their main high street, and there is GameStop in like different countries as well.
Ireland as well.
Does Ireland have them?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool.
I've seen them in Italy actually. When I'm in Italy, I often pop into GameStop.
I think there was one in Norway when we went there as well.
But then they're all in Norwegian or Italian.
I have been to GameStop in Florida, and I went in because I googled retro game shops while I was there. I was like, "Well, gotta check it out," and it said GameStop had them, so I went in. Says on my phone here, you do retro games. I was like, oh yeah, at the back, and it was just Wii games.
Well, recently they haven't had a good time, and their stock price dropped from $16 a share to $5 a share. So they're not doing well, and everyone's saying, there's a headline here from Business Insider: the world's biggest video game retailer, GameStop, is dying, and they've done a whole kind of insight into what caused their demise. But generally, people are blaming the fact that, especially with modern day consoles now, stuff is going more digital download. PCs, it's already happened to with Steam and stuff like that.
To a degree, like when I went to America, they'd replaced a lot of the nice boxes with cardboard redeem codes. Yeah. And that really doesn't
just walls and walls
create,
even
and there's no point. What's the point?
You can't browse or create community with redeem codes.
And what's the point of going to the shop to buy a game code to then take it home and download it when you can just download it at home?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I tried to...
It's not like they go on sale or anything, these game cards do.
If anything, sometimes they're more expensive because, they want to keep these businesses running. Yeah. So, I had it when the Switch came out and I wanted to get Zelda for it. And bizarrely, you could get the Switch, but you couldn't get Zelda. So, it was you think it'd be the way around. But then when I went to Game to get it, the girl's like, we haven't got any left, but I can give you a code. And I'm like, well, Can I at least keep the box, the display box on the shelf? I can't give you that. I'm like, well, most of us download it on the
You
store.
don't deserve the box.
Well, if I put the box on my shelf, maybe I've got something out of it. But you're right. I mean, the fact that, especially the way Microsoft and Sony are going, everyone thinks next gen, they're probably going to get rid of discs. It'll all be digital distribution.
Also, I think weird collector's editions as well. So, because I used to go to these places and be like, oh, can I get this? Well, we've sold out of all the normal copies, but we have the £200 collector edition with a figurine.
You get the statue.
But yeah, I mean, again, how many people buy them, though? It's not enough to keep high street businesses running.
No, no.
So how do they combat this demise? Well, it looks like they've come up with a plan. And what they want to do, really, is go back to roots. So apparently they're looking at creating in-store spaces in their shops for local gaming competitions.
Oh, that's cool.
Get people in.
Yeah.
And also, what is of interest to us is, apparently they're going to be doing new shops, GameStop shops, that are 100% focused on retro gaming hardware and software.
Yeah, I found this approach in America. When I went into the Apple store, they were completely on the commercial sell, push, clap everyone that's buying stuff. And then you went to the Microsoft Windows store and they were, oh, what are you working on? Here's some free software. Come work on that in the corner, Minecraft corner. It had more of a community feel.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what, I mean, I remember going to, Electronics Boutique and that as a kid, and Future Zone and places like that. And on a Saturday afternoon, all the kids would be around the systems playing them.
Yeah, and a friend of mine, funny enough, has been saying that that's something that's been missing, not just in Nottingham, but really across the whole of the UK.
Yeah,
is he keeps saying his big dream of his is to open his own game shop, but he's like, but I would bring back the card games. Every Monday night we have this card game, and on a Saturday we do this card game, and we have these competitions, and just really, really revive that kind of scene. So it's kind of good to see that GameStop are kind of want to jump on that, but it's really how successful is it going to be?
Yeah, it's happening everywhere as well. So we've got Retro World in Derby, which was kind of a stall on the market, but it was incredibly popular.
Been there 20 years as well.
Yeah. And they've just moved, and they've had to go from that area as well. And we've got no independent game stores in Nottingham.
Well, that is one
problem.
Mostly
pawn shops.
Pawn brokers.
Pawn brokers, yeah.
Clarify that. That's the bad thing about this. The fact that with GameStop, and if it happens over here with Game and that, if they're going to be opening dedicated retro gaming stores, your independents place in Derby, Games World, they're not going to be able to compete with it, I don't think. It's difficult.
It depends where they go with it, because of, let's say, dedicated retro-only shops, but are we talking actual original hardware?
Apparently so. Okay. Apparently it's going to be old systems, old games.
So what are we going to do? Just go to the car boots and to eBay and
I think they've got a large supply of it already.
They were doing refurbs.
It's a shame they don't sell it in their regular shops.
They were doing refurbs of old consoles, because I remember seeing a few videos a couple of years ago. People would be like, "Is the GameStop refurb Dreamcast any good?" And
I've watched a few of them recently. Yeah, so I guess they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
With refurbs and stuff like that, but like you say, have they got that much stock, or is it going to be a case of, are they opening 3 of these in every city, or are we going to open one per state? I don't know.
But weirdly, I found that also in America that they're more into that gaming. Like, we're here, we come for the arcades, we play our arcade and go. They'll stand on a pinball machine for 5 hours still. There's still people that will come. So if you can build a space, maybe I think in the UK it would work with a bar. If you had a bar and a video game shop,
we always need beer.
Yeah, true.
But yeah, I mean, it's cool. Like you said, I mean, they have moved into the retro market anyway in recent years by selling them in the store. I mean, like CX have over here.
Yeah.
But at the moment, it's only a small part of it. I mean, it kind of does feel like a bit of a last gasp attempt to keep themselves in business.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sure it's going to work. Yeah.
I mean, it's retro games, so I'm not going to say no.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. We'll go in and browse and then buy them cheaper online, probably. So, thank you for checking out the news in this week's show. Everything we've talked about, I will stick it in our show notes at theretrohour.com. Of course, please do keep supporting the podcast with your 5-star reviews and your ratings. Those do really help us.
And iTunes reviews as well, because we're on 98 or 99, so it'd just be good to get over that 100.
Oh, we need to tick over the 100 reviews now, do we? Okay. It will happen now, I'm sure. As soon as you said that, come on. Who's going to go on there? 100th
Somebody
review.
Will do it for us.
We should give him a mention next week, the 100th review.
Yeah.
Okay, as long as it's a good one. Right then, guys.
Ravi's mum said.
Mrs. Abbott. So let's get the inside story of Tectoy, the company keeping Sega hardware alive and games in 2019 in Brazil. Ravi went to chat to the CEO, Stefano Arnaldo.
You're listening to the Retro Hour, and I'm talking to Stefano Arnaldo, the CEO of Tectoy in Brazil. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm fine. Thank you very much.
Excellent. It's great to have you on. And we always ask this question of all our guests, and that was, what is the first memory of video games or computers that you have?
I think the first is when I first saw an Atari 2600 in the beginning of the 80s. And this impressed me quite a lot because it was so different from everything I had seen before. And I think I fell in love with video games at that moment.
Yeah, that was a beautiful machine. And so did you always want to have a job in technology and computers?
Well, maybe not really, but I was working with an uncle of mine in a company in the photographic field. And then I visited Nintendo in Kyoto I don't remember exactly if it was 78 or 79, I don't remember exactly. And I wanted to introduce in Brazil the Game & Watch, right?
Ah, yeah, so it must have been early Nintendo.
Yeah, very early Nintendo. Basically, at that time, they were basically an arcade. Well, they were basically a card company, right?
Yeah, playing cards.
Yeah, but they had already the arcades. Donkey Kong, of course, was their number one hit at the time. I think Mario was not in the main role at that time. And I got the rights to assemble in Brazil, but then my uncle didn't want to establish, manufacturing facility.
Yeah.
Right. And then I left the company and went to work with Sharp in Brazil. Sharp in Brazil at that time was a joint venture between the Japanese company and a Brazilian big company. And they were interested in introducing the Atari in Brazil. So I joined them, I think, in the beginning of '83. If I'm not mistaken.
Well,
and so I started to get involved, let's say, in video games at that time.
Well, you mentioned that there was a restriction on imports, and a lot of our listeners may not know this about Brazil, but could you explain the kind of import tax?
Yeah, well, today we still have high import taxes, so if you want to be successful in Brazilian video games, you probably need to manufacture your consoles down here. That's what we do. But at that time, in the let's say in the late 80s, late 70s, the beginning of the 80s, it was even stricter. It was nearly impossible to get import license for the finished product. It was absolutely impossible, but you could manufacture it, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to start the manufacturing in Manaus. Manaus is in the middle of the Amazon. We have basically at that time it was the beginning of in '72 the manufacturing started there, and today basically all electronics are assembled in there. If you think basically of any product, electronic product in Brazil, it's basically manufactured there.
So every single thing has to be within Brazil. Even if it was made from outside, you could bring the parts and then make in Brazil.
Yeah, assemble in Brazil. Of course, today you are allowed to import the finished product, but the taxes that you're gonna pay, let's say on a TV set, will make it probably impossible for you to compete with the manufactured item in the free zone of Manaus.
And you said you work with Panasonic. You have your own television format in Brazil. Is it based on NTSC or PAL? Or?
Yeah, well, it's a kind of a hybrid. It's called PAL-M, but it's basically an NSTC product, right? So it's basically unique. Well, today, in the past, this was something special. Today, all the chips, they are multi-platform, so that's no issue anymore. But it's a PAL-M you only have in Brazil.
Well, let's get into consoles and stuff. So the NES was hugely popular in North America. Did this happen in South America as well? Or was the kind of high dollar price expensive for them to kind of bring in?
Well, they were, of course, very well known because the NES was the number one console in the world, right?
Yeah.
We were lucky enough to present the Master System in a, let's say, in a complete way. And one of the reasons we made a huge effort to present the Master System was because we knew about the success of Nintendo, right? So the Sega was not very well known or not known at all by the public at that time. And so we did an extra effort when we introduced it in Brazil with some, let's say, thinking that we would have to beat Nintendo, which was the clear leader, right? If I remember well, I think Nintendo penetrated in something like 33 million North American homes, and the Master System, I think, did 1.8 million homes at that time, just to give a reference of how strong the Nintendo was in North America. And in Brazil, we follow more what happens in USA.
When you joined Tectoy, did you kind of know about the history of the company and the kind of the gaming background?
When I went to work at Sharp, not my first boss, but my second boss, which was the vice president in charge of consumer electronics, with whom I worked directly, he was the founder of Tectoy. So when he invited me to join the company, it was exactly to be able to develop the video games, right? So the company, when I joined, it was brand new. I was not there in the grounding of the company in the first, but I came like 15 minutes later, more or less.
We had the Master System in the UK because the NES didn't actually seem that popular. We had Mastertronics, who were the kind of UK distributor. I was wondering if you had any contact with them at all?
Yes, sure. We had, and of course, we had a good exchange of information because we were always looking to different games, right?
Yeah.
And they had their hands on some games that were only available in UK. No, we had very, very good relations. I think it was Virgin Mastertronic, something like that, if I recall well.
Yes, because we had the kind of NES was not popular. The SNES was a bit more popular, but the main system was the Master System, and then Mega Drive after that as well.
Yeah, then maybe we had this similar history because also we managed to I think in the first years, of course, we had 80 or more % of the 8-bit market in Brazil. We did not have more because we had to fight the Nintendo clones. It took a long time to Nintendo to come to Brazil officially. So early days, our big problem was that we were not competing against the NES, but we were competing against several Nintendo clones, which of course were very cheap to manufacture.
There's kind of 100 games in one machines and stuff like that.
Yeah, something like that. But worse than the, let's say, at that time they did not build in, like 100 games, but the hardware itself was very, very inexpensive. So it gave us a really hard time. But we were quite lucky to create some differentials. We launched the Master System with the 3D glasses and the laser gun, right, the light phaser. And we produced a really, really nice TV commercial. We went even to LA in US to do the 3Ds. It was, I think, Missile Command 3D, if I remember well. And you had the impression that that the bullets were coming out of the TV when you were using the 3D glasses, and this we tried to mimic with computer graphics. But this is 1989. Computer graphics and TV at that time was something quite special, right? So it was really, really interesting the way we presented. We spent a really lot of money to do in this TV. It was a 1-minute TV commercial. We were not a well-known company. Nobody knew us. And on the contrary, the Nintendo clones, they were presented by big companies, right? Some of them which had, how you say, excellent brands and excellent recognition by the general public, right? So for us, it was really tough, but we really, I think, did a good job because we were really researching the end consumer and preparing exactly what they wanted. Every day we had a 1-minute show on the main TV in Brazil. We have global TV, which is extremely strong in Brazil at the time also. So we had 1 minute every day in which we would give hints and tips which came out to be a very, very popular show. The kids, after some time, were waiting. At that time, they used the VCRs, right? And they were taping this 1-minute show to get the hits and tips. Then we had the hotline, and the hotline was really super prepared. Then we had the Master Club, where they got all kinds of information. So it was completely different when you bought a clone was, let's say, made by a consumer product company, and you bought a master system, which was really from a video game company. And very shortly, we were already leading the market.
Well, I also wondered, you mentioned a lot about consumers in the phone line, because we talked to people from Australia and they had a Sega phone line as well. There was quite a lot. We wondered about magazines and culture. Did you guys have like Sega Power or Mega Power or any of these, or were they Brazilian Sega magazines?
In Brazil, we encourage different publishers to start their own video game magazines, and we helped them in this task. And 3 of them really started their own video game magazines, which in the beginning were, one of them was even weekly, and then they were monthly. So we did not, we were very successful in that. And as we were so dominant in the market, those 3 magazines were mainly talking about Master System. So in the end, it was it turned out to even be better that instead of let's say, we having our own magazine, we have the others talking about us, and in 3 different magazines. It was really fantastic.
Yeah, it sounds like a good range. And you mentioned Master System there as well. I was amazed to look and see how many different range of Master Systems you have, how many different systems. Could you talk us through a few and just tell me which one's your favorite Master System?
Well, what happened was that let's say in USA and in other countries, probably in Great Britain too, the new generations were killing the former generations, right? So then you had 16-bit, and then you had 32-bit, and so on. And in Brazil, because of our demographics, we maintained the 8-bit when we launched 16-bit, and we maintained 16-bit when we launched 32-bit, and we maintained 32-bit when we launched 128, and so on. By the way, we manufacture 8-bit until today, right? So what happens if you imagine that this is now 30 years? So if you want to keep a console platform alive for 30 years, you have to invent different things, right? So we were coming up with different consoles, different versions, different games during all those years. So I can't remember all of the versions, probably more than 20 different versions of Master System. And difficult to choose, let's say, one favorite, but we did one which was wireless, and this was unique. I think this was really unique. It was battery powered, and it was like a handheld, and it had antenna, and it would go by RF from your handheld Master System to your TV set. That was pretty amazing.
That's really cool. And I hear you guys are still producing Mega Drives. What do you think of the Sega Mega Drive Mini that's come out as well?
Yeah, well, we did something really special when we in 2 years ago in 2017 when we completed 30 years, and it was also 30 years of relationship with Sega. And there are not so many video game companies in the world which have a 30 years ongoing relationship. So we wanted to do something special to celebrate this relationship with the Japanese. So we decided to do the original Mega Drive again. Everything based on the original, with the original modes and so on. And this was pretty amazing because as you know, the components don't exist anymore. The Mega Drive had 2 audio processors from Yamaha, which were excellent products, right? And in order to substitute them, it was really not easy. It took us more than 1 year, let's say, to tune the sound in the way that it could reflect the same quality of the original product. So I think this is something really amazing, and anyone who wants to do today, a version of the Mega Drive will have quite a challenge when it comes to sound.
Yeah, I've actually seen quite a lot of clone machines, and they all suffer from sound problems.
Yeah, not easy. One of the difference from Tectoy was that we knew the product very well. When I mean engineering-wise, right? So when we did all those versions, our engineering was really strong. It's still very strong, and we know the product from inside really very well. And this helped us a lot. But even so, it took us more than 1 year to come not to perfect sound, because perfect sound it's nearly impossible without the original Yamaha products, but to something really good. So even the critics love the sound that we managed to achieve.
Well, you mentioned that you know the machines in and out, and kind of you guys offered online banking and MegaNet as well. So SegaNet, you had a second version of that. So you'd be able to do online banking on your Mega Drive?
Yeah, this was amazing. We have one bank here in Brazil, which is called Bradesco. It's a huge bank, really big. And, this is 1994, right? In 93, 93 we introduced it. So in 93, online banking was quite different what it was today, you have to imagine. And the problem in Brazil that you had a state monopoly of the telephone lines. So the telephone lines were very expensive. So something they could, in money of today, I would guess something like, I don't know, £6,000, something like that for one telephone line. So the bank had a big problem because it was quite expensive for them to have customer service and because of the huge investment in all those lines. And we developed a system through Mega Drive that would talk to the bank for 16 seconds, right? So with your Mega Drive, when you contacted the computer on the bank, in 16 seconds we would download all the information and then you would continue offline. And the bank simply loved it because any contact they had with the consumers at that time was like, I don't know, 5 minutes in average, something like that. And we changed this to 16 seconds, right? So they loved the idea, and we sold a ton of those banking units because of the help of the bank. And also they had a fantastic technology because they were, most of the lines in Brazil, they were not digital at that time. They were analogic. So you can imagine it was really tough, but they had excellent technology. And while developing this technology with this bank, we came up with the MegaNet. And with the MegaNet, you could play head-to-head with very low latency. You have to imagine that at this time it was only you didn't have fiber, right? You had only common telephone lines, and most of them were analogic lines. So latency was quite an issue, and to work below 200 milliseconds, it was really a challenge. And you had to, rewrite the games. Let's say if I was playing basketball with you or boxing or something like that, we had to minimize the number of movements so that this information could travel through telephone's line quickly enough so that you would not feel any latency. And it was amazing. Then we started sending you to our server first, where we would choose somebody which was not so far away from you, but by your zip code, And then we started to have chat rooms where you would decide with whom you would play. And then the kids, we had the book of records, and the kids who were in those book of records, they were, let's say, the kings here in Brazil. They had all the girls. It was amazing. This MegaNet, what they did was amazing.
That sounds absolutely awesome. And you guys also have kind of done over 1,000 titles, and I guess the process of converting titles must be quite hard. But when the Game Gear came out, did that really help you guys getting stuff for the Master System?
Yeah, we converted games from Game Gear to Master System, which was a big help because it refreshed the library. But it was a huge work because I don't know exactly, but I think that Game Gear had, 4,096 colors. Mega Drive Master System had, 200 and something colors. And it gave us a huge work to adapt the coloring part. It was had to be done basically by hand. And it took us, 3 months just to make the color part of a game which came from Mega Drive to Master System. So it was a lot of work.
All that palette kind of swapping and stuff.
Yeah, well, not easy. But on the other hand, it was interesting because we were refreshing Master System with new games. Even one time we did Street Fighter 2 for Master System, and that was also an interesting story because we had to approve it for Capcom, right?
Yeah.
And they did not really remember well what Master System was. That was also a problem in the industry. In the beginning, everybody knew, but then sometime you had new managers, new directors. They didn't know what 8-bit was, right? Or what Master System was.
Did you have to convince them that this market existed?
Yeah. So one guy came from Brazil, from Capcom, one director, and we played the trick on him. He knew about the 16-bit, about Mega Drive, because Mega Drive was really well known in Japan, right? And but this was many years later, right? So what we did, we hide the Master System, and we showed him the TV and a Mega Drive controller, right? And he played the game, and then he said, "Well, this looks like a very primitive 16-bit game, right? It looks a little bit primitive to me." And we said, "Yeah, it is. It is an 8-bit game." And then we showed him the console that was hidden, and then he could not believe that we were able to do in 8-bit something which resembled 16-bit, although primitive, right? Because of the size of the characters and everything. And then he approved the game. and then we were able to release Street Fighter 2 to Master System.
That's absolutely awesome. And another title that's really culturally important to Brazil was Monica as well, and that was converted from Wonder Boy. Did they understand about Monica and how big the character was? Did you have to explain to them?
No, they did not really. The Japanese did not really understand, but much. But at that time, they had so much confidence in us that when we told them that this was important for our strategy to have games with Brazilian characters, that they basically believed it. They said, "Yeah, go ahead. Just make sure you respect all the copyrights, right, from all the parties involved." So at one time it was interesting. Once we got the confidence of them, they really helped us a lot.
Also, you managed to get some games that weren't actually released worldwide. A fantastic game was Fire and Ice for the Master System. How did you find out about these games, and how did you convince the guys that it was worth releasing them?
Mainly, we knew every single Master System game that was one time released wherever, right? I don't think that anyone escaped our radar. And many times people, when you manage to, to meet the people who had invented the game or had the rights and so on, and you explained about Brazil, and you gave them an order for, let's say, 10,000 pieces. At that time, it was easy to get the license. We had trouble with Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, because this belonged to Brotherbund. And the people in Brotherbund did not know about they were basically a PC company, right? A computer company. And so we told them that we wanted to do the game for Mega Drive and for Master System when we got the rights for the computer, right? And they said, no, it's not possible because we never launched those titles for video games. Right? And he said, no, you did. And she said, no, we never did it. So I had bought in many years ago in Toys R Us, a version of the Where in the World it was Carmen Sandiego for Master System, which was from Parker Bros. So I showed the lady the product itself, and she was still not very convinced. And then I was lucky enough because I knew a big director in Hasbro, which was the one guy responsible for when Hasbro bought Parker Bros, right? And he came from, I think he came from Tonka. Tonka had bought Parker Bros, and then or vice versa, I don't know. And then Nintendo, Hasbro bought both of them. And he knew everything about. So I managed to get a letter from him, giving all the history and all the. And with this, I convinced the lady that they could give us the license, and she did. And then we sent the product for final approval, and the approval never came. Then I went to California to visit the lady. It was a beautiful place. It was after Sausalito in the mountains there. And I told the lady what happened. We are going to jeopardize our big TV campaign and everything because you're not giving us the final approval on the Master System. And she said, yeah, I'm not giving you because I don't have a console. I don't know what it is about, right? And I said, why didn't you tell us? I would send you one. And then after some time, she said, okay, go on, launch it. And then it was very nice because we made a simultaneous launch in Brazil for Mega Drive, for Master System, and for PC with a TV campaign. It was the first edutainment software for multi-platform launched in Brazil. It was a big success.
That's really, really cool. And I think a title that kind of blew the mind of lots of Sega fans was Duke Nukem 3D. The fact that you guys could get sound, music, and really good visual working all at the same time was amazing. How did Phantasy Star help in its development?
A lot, because Phantasy Star was very interesting because looking on what people did outside Brazil, I was always envy about the role-playing games, that every software company was doing so well in role-playing games. In Brazil, we did not have role-playing games, right? So we said, okay, let's localize Phantasy Star for Master System for Portuguese, and let's introduce it and let's see how it goes, right? And it was a massive work because the memory was very, very tight, and the phrases in Portuguese are much larger than in English, right? So for you to translate anything from English to Portuguese, you need much more space. So it was really tough, but we did it, and it was a big success. And then many years later, when we were working on Duke Nukem, it was really difficult. The first-person vision was something which was not designed for 8-bit, for 16-bit, sorry. And then one of our producers said, I'll have a look how we did it in Phantasy Star, because I remember that there were some mazes in Phantasy Star which was like first-person view. Maybe it will help. And thanks to this, we were able to do the conversion of the PC game to 16-bit, and it came out pretty nice.
Well, did Tectoy ever want to do their own original Sega hardware? I heard of a rumor about maybe you asked about a black and white handheld machine.
Yeah, that was another amazing story, because we had Game Gear. Game Gear, of course, was very nice, although it was eating batteries like hell, right? And but the price point was obviously higher, and so we thought, why don't we do like Nintendo? Nintendo with Game Boy was extremely successful. So we were looking to something in the black and white area, and we found a Taiwanese guy who did a product which was not really very good, but our engineering was able to correct mainly the sound problems they had and some other, the general quality and so on. And then you had Tiger. Tiger was a company leading in handheld games, right? Very good company. So we talked with them because they had a huge distribution, especially in USA, if they would distribute the product, and they said, yeah, they would, because it looked exactly like the product that would suit them a lot. So we further developed the product, and we showed it to Sega, and then we get the massive no. And although we had really good relationship with Sega, it was impossible to convince them, because they said, no, Sega will never launch the black and white unit. We only do color. We will never go down and do black and white. And to make a long story short, that was it. So we could not release it. And I think that if they would have authorized and licensed us, this would have been a huge success.
Well, another fantastic book that's going to come out is going to be Console Wars. That's going to be made into a TV series with Seth Rogen, and that's all about kind of Sega versus Nintendo, but Sega America versus Japan. I was wondering, when the kind of Mega CD came out at the same time as the 32X, could you see how confusing it could be for the consumer? And did you start to think that Sega was on the decline?
Yeah, this was very confusing times. I think your word is very good, because our launch of Sega CD had been a big success, and the games were not up to the success of the hardware, right? And then we had the 32X, which could have been something really special. And I remember I was so confused by everything what was happening. So there was one guy in Sega of America. He was leading the development there, and he was developing the new 32X games. And so I took a plane especially to go there and to have a chat with him. I can't recall his name, but he has a name with a number, like number 4, number 5, something like that. And I remember that he could not convince me that the games that he was putting out would be something really, really different, right? So I remember coming back from this trip really disappointed, because I thought that the 32X technology, if they would really develop amazing games, could be something really fantastic. But because of the power, right, that you had like in VR and so on, but finally it was really disappointing. And the word you use is perfect.
Well, we found that Sega it didn't disappear from culture, but it was very quiet and like dormant in the UK and stuff. But then the fans started producing stuff. So there was these studios like Mega Cat Studios that produced new Mega Drive games. There was even a cart recently produced that does the whole Sega CD on one cart, which is crazy. Do you keep your eye on these developments?
Basically, not so much anymore, because we, let's say, our company now is a very small company. So we're still doing Master System, Mega Drive. We do some licensing of T-shirts and those things, but our attention, let's say, to video games at this stage is really small. Right, and I don't know. We just there is a huge community in Brazil who loves the old days. So every time we do any event, it is really amazing. I give so many autographs. Even the people, if let's say when I go to Comic-Con or something like, the people even recognize me in the middle of the crowd. So I think we are still very popular. But we do very, very little now. Now our activity is, how you saying, really thin, very thin.
So kind of Tectoy, like the retro stuff would be like a hobby or a side, not the main business.
Yeah, it's something like that, and so it's. I think it's many people still cultivate the memory from those times, but in business-wise, it's very thin.
It seems like a very unique place as well, Brazil, because in 2013, Nintendo completely left Brazil, which is amazing, seeing there's the old Japanese community there as well.
Yeah, well, Nintendo, they were never fond of manufacturing locally, right? And this was something which they never accepted, right? I talked to them and many times, and they even hired some lobby here to fight the Brazilian structure, let's say, trying to convince regulators to change the laws, which of course was helpless. You can't do it like that, right? And so they nearly never accepted. And if you want to be successful here, you really need to manufacture. And electronics manufacturing in Brazil is really, really high level because of those incentives, right? And then finally they decided to leave, and they had a very good relationship with Gradiente, which was the original company which had the clones of Nintendo, which gave us a hard time in the 80s, right? but then turned to be their distributor in the future. And they manufactured in Brazil. And when they took the rights out of Gradiente and gave it to a trading company from Panama, officially they did not leave Brazil, but in fact they left Brazil at that time when they did it, because not manufacturing here and giving rights to an outside company, which is a trading company who trades, I don't know, all kinds of different things, right?
Kind of dodging it.
Video games is something really, really special, right? It's one of the few things in which you do hardware and software together, right? Many times, if you are a TV producer, and TV in the sense that you produce the hardware, you don't care about the software so much. Somebody else is going to take care of it, right? But in video games, you have to be really careful about both, right? Hardware and software. So not everybody has the hardware and software in the same heads, right? So that's quite unique. So it's very special. Video games are very special, and the trading company, it's difficult to be successful because it's not the same thing, right?
Yeah, and I think that's a very good summary. I was wondering kind of what are Tectoy planning now? Are they got any future products in plan? Or are they just going to still keep producing some Mega Drives?
Yeah, at the moment we are still producing Master System and Mega Drive. We added Atari to our lineup because the many people in Brazil who love the old times, right? So we have the 2600 in its original form, not the mini form, right? And we have there are not enough museums, video game museums in the world, right? So we have to sell it to the final public. And that's basically what we do in the video game areas. But it's quite like more a legacy business. We do some activities for the community with some events sometimes because they love it, right?
Well, thank you so much for talking to us. It's been excellent.
Well, I thank you very much for your kind time, and I wish you all success in Britain.